What if I add something to data? Would that change it? Or remove something? The model we use is the Biba model. For that matter, the Bell model over here. Or Clark Wilson if you want. Clark Wilson is a commercial integrity model. Clark Wilson is a commercial integrity model. All right, so these keywords ultimately will help you. You gotta watch out for them. I scan the documents for these words, and if you notice here, look at the words that they use here. Information modification, destruction. You could put destruction under integrity. Or prove that you are who you say you are. There's non-repudiation and authenticity. I often put those under integrity as well. You could add them there. Notice the confidentiality. Access, there's your access. Disclosure, did we get disclosure? We did not get disclosure. Let's put that up here. If things aren't disclosed, they are no longer confidential. Would you agree or disagree?
Agree.
This may seem tedious, but I assure you it's very important. If you destroy it, that could change the availability and the integrity. You can say modification or destruction. That would be fine. All right, so that's good. All right, so FSMA talks about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You have to know that that's the dominant forces of FSMA. Also, the authority. Who has the authority? Not accountability, but authority. The director shall oversee agency information, including policies or procedures. I want you to write down a couple different words. Policies are basically rules. And another name for practices would be the word procedure. Also, there's the difference between principles and procedure. And it's very helpful to know if you're looking at a principle or a procedure. The principles are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But you could have many different types of step-by-step instructions to preserve confidentiality. So I could use the procedure of DES to keep something confidentiality. The principle of confidentiality, but the procedure would be DES. The procedure would be AES. The procedure would be SSS. I speak typically to principles, not necessarily procedures, because I just assume the technical folks are gonna, figure out whatever the standard tells them that they need to do. They have to go down to that door right there. Anybody in that second door? Thank you. Yep. All right, so principles versus procedures. Procedures can change over time based off of what? Why would you want to change a procedure?
Inefficient.
Begins with the G. Ends in guidelines. Guidelines, right? Recommendations, suggestions, best practices, right? All of that's there in a suggestive type of way. Eventually they get incorporated into procedures. But you got to make the recommendation first, what you think works the best. A little trial and error, what is the industry doing, and then your procedure will change. So let's actually write all that down. You have policies, P-O-L-I-C-I, policies, procedures. You got to get this terminology down. Guidelines, I'm just going to write guidelines, baseline, and then standard. And I'll give you the keyword for this. It's minimum Baseline would be starting point. Guidelines would be recommendation. Procedures, step by step. And then policies would be the rules. So think about it. Well, standard, these are minimums. Do you raise the standard or do you raise the policy? See the difference between that?
Right.
You substitute the words out, they mean something completely different. And that's why I need to articulate the point of the difference between these words. Policies are rules. CEO comes up and says, we're going to have a policy on this. He's basically saying we need to come up with some rules. And so people are going to follow the rules. How are they going to do it? With procedures. Again, the cone of learning states that you guys have to repeat that back to me. The thinking it versus saying that is different on that chart. So just stand back. So policies, how do you implement that? On specific procedures, which are step-by-step instructions. What are the procedures based off? The guidelines, the recommendations, the best practices, and things like that. So how do you measure the effectiveness of the policy? Well, you need a baseline. You need a starting point. What are we doing now? What do we want to change? And that's one thing that our government is not so great at. They love to put policies in place, but do they measure the effectiveness of them? Do they use metrics? You know, we say, I don't know, we'll just pick anything. FSMA, what was the effectiveness on FSMA? How much money did we spend and what was the reward for spending that much money? Was it worth it or not? You can take any subject and basically do a cost-benefit analysis on that. So baselines, the starting point and the standards are the minimum. So the minimum security, the minimal confidentiality, availability, and integrity levels. But that had to start somewhere, probably in 1974. Or at least so the rule tells us, or the law. Okay? I know this is...
standard is the minimum requirements.
Yes. Let's raise the standard. Let's raise the bar. Let's raise the minimum.
I'm just trying to separate standard from baseline.
Yeah, no, I want you to, in your own word. Again, I know this stuff. I don't have to take the test. So for me to speak all week long to you guys is useless to me. You guys have to actually teach this stuff to me. If you teach it to me, you'll understand it better. So getting that separate in your head, yeah, say it out loud, explain it to me, let me help you with the words and illustrate the differences. That's where you're really going to drive this material home. And again, I want to show you some of the specific words in the documents and really what that stuff means, because most people would say, you know, the director shall oversee agency information on security policies, practices, including blah, 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 blah. And they forget that the director oversees the rules and the practices of those rules called procedures in developing, maintaining, implementing, anything life cycle, right? Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Right. I think there's one other. Okay, so coordinating with the development of the standard and guidelines, basically NIST. That's where that stuff's going to come up. So where do the standards come up? Where do the guidelines come up with? That's NIST, folks. That's where we get that stuff. That's these guys. Those two right there. That's where we're going to get those. All right. Or compliance. What does compliance mean?
You will do as I say.
You are doing as I said.
Well, no. You will do as I say would be the policy or the standard.
You are doing as I say.
Right. Slight difference. Those are those differences that I want you guys to pick up on. Right. You know, I could say I want the standard to be AES encryption, but if your agency is not using AES encryption, well, the standard's still set. You're just not following it. Your systems aren't in compliance. Right? Agree or disagree? Also, and this is, well, it's here, I'll capitalize on it, but it's pretty much across the board, reviewing at least annually. That's the minimum at least annually. Would you agree that that's a minimum?
Yes.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's done.
That is also, right. And also you have to report that to Congress. So what's the strategy there? So what? You got to report to Congress. Why would you want to do that?
You,
More money.
not necessarily you want to do it, it's a requirement.
Okay, I could say, I want you to clean your room, and then when you're done, I want you to report back to me. Why?
Right, that's you wanting me to do it, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to do it.
And people are getting better.
But that's to ensure that we are in compliance.
And I think they miss it a little bit on this, but I'm just trying to get closer to accountability too. Right? People have to go, they have to go sit and basically, somebody gets in trouble, they have to go in front of Congress to speak, and basically it's like a punish session. You watch them get beat up by all the people asking all the difficult questions. In theory, it's to get someone to basically, under oath, and basically tell us the truth. In theory.
Well, isn't there also financial strings attached? Non-compliance or non-reporting?
Yeah, there is. But for right now, that would be out of scope. But it all depends on really what you're looking at. But yes, the answer is yes. All right. Also, what's also graded here is national security systems and Department of Defense and Central Intelligence agencies. Those are specifically noted here. And then the federal agency responsibilities. The head of each agency. Okay, highest person up is the one that basically has to answer all the questions. Hence, you look at the Eric Holder situation and you see why he's under the gun here, right? No pun intended. Basically, comply with the requirements, the standards, okay, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that's basically it. Senior agency officials. All right. Then you have OMB memorandums. Let's do it out. What is an OMB memorandum? And you basically, if you just search for OMB memorandum, click on your first link, then you get to this page right here. We will need to know the difference between bulletins, circulars, and memoranda. So what is a memoranda? And I believe I don't have to define on this page, but I have it on the page. What are OMB memorandums? Just look at a few of them. First of all, let's recognize the format of them. So what would be the format?
Bullets.
Basically M dash something dash something, number dash number is the format of that. So let's look at a couple of the memorandum. Eliminating excess conference spending and promoting efficiency. Accelerating spending of remaining funds from the American Recovery and Investment Act. Reporting instructions for FSMA and agency privacy. Accelerating payments. So let's just peek at any one of these and see here. So from the study of the administration, it's been a priority of the president, make sure that the government operates at the utmost efficiency. Now more than ever, family is important. To that end, the administration has taken serious steps. This is what we did under the Recovery Act, where the vice president and OMB worked hand in hand. Last week, the president, what's the feel of these documents? Of a memorandum?
Slight division.
What do you mean division?
Vision.
Yeah, you're right. The vision of each president, what they want to communicate. In other words, it's very easy for the president to say, look, let's communicate what we're trying to do through a memorandum or a memo. So let's send a memo out to all of the agencies. This is what we're doing, and this is what we're trying to do. Very, very warm and fuzzy in its language. If you compare that to FSMA, where you had specific U.S. code, A, B, C, D, that format. This is night and day format from from a law, right? Does this have a feeling of a law? No, it discusses the vision, right? So it's just basically a memo that's sent out, okay? And while we're here, let's do circulars. Circulars. Instructions or information used by Office of Management, Budget, and federal agencies. They are expected to have a continuing effect of 2 years or more. 2 years. To obtain circulars that are not available online, okay, you can do that. So circulars by major category. You have budget circulars, state and local government circulars, federal procurement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can look at each one of them. So we could go down somewhere in here will be A130. Here it is, A130. And we'll look at the PDF of that. Circular. Memorandum for the heads of the executive department and agencies. So we come to the beginning of this. This circular establishes a policy for the management of federal information resources. OMB includes procedural and analytical guidelines, recommendations, or suggestions for implementing specific aspects of these policies. So what's a circular?
Guidelines?
The policy and guideline, to communicate policy and guideline information. And this is like, while I'm staring at it, the authority, who gives you the right? Who gives you the authority to actually do this? Per Paperwork Reduction Act of 1980, amended in 1995, the Core Clinging Act, etc., 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 the Privacy Act, the Computer Security Act of 87, right? So basically, the Paperwork Elimination Act of 98, or even by executive order number. So they have authority to do this, whether it be a law or regulation, et cetera, there is authority, and that's defined.
So the circular is what again?
It communicates policy and guideline information to the heads of executive departments. And then your bulletins, I think this is the one where it's far and few between. All right, 2000, yeah, look at how many bulletins were pushed out. In 2010, there was only 4 of them. In 2009, there's 2, 8, there's 3. There's very few in comparison to the memorandums. So let's just pick one of 2011. All right, purpose of background. Provide continued appropriations for the period and automatically appropriating amounts provided by the continuing resolution, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what's being stated here? Granted, this is a specific one. You guys probably remember hearing this in the news, October 4th, 2011.
Kept my paycheck coming.
Right. All right.
Keeps my paycheck coming.
Right. Some of this is last minute stuff. At least lately, a lot of this has been last minute stuff. But they'll basically say, look, this was done, and let's put a bulletin, let's post it to everybody in a formal capacity. Different feel than a memorandum, though. Go ahead. Question?
Was done and what they're doing, right?
It's what?
Was done and was being done.
Yeah, a lot of these are why-oriented. So
That was a question.
yeah, so you think about it, like right the attachment, frequently asked questions. Why are we doing this? All right, well, here's your question. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So it's another level of communication that the executive branch can put out. This is all executive branch, which is probably another thing to recognize is that Whether it be a memorandum, a bulletin, or a circular, they're all executive branch oriented. And then your Homeland Security presidential directives, and that'll be the last one in this section. I think this will actually say it. I try not to use the Wikipedia if I can. Some of them it's easy. All right, so watch this. Let's go back to 1947, Truman and Foreign. He called them, and this is where it gets confusing, right? Over time, why they keep changing the names of this, I have no idea. But National Security Council of Intelligence Directives. And the name changes. National Security Study Memorandums, Presidential Review Memorandums, then they were called Presidential Directives in Carter. Reagan called them National Security Study Directives. National Security Reviews under Bush Sr. And then when we get to basically Clinton, Presidential Decision Directives, National Security Presidential Directives, Homeland Security Presidential Directives under George Bush, hence the 2001 Homeland Security, and then Obama has broken down into studies versus policies. So the language on the HSPD, a lot of them are known as HSPD, but technically they change with every president. The name of the documents change. Basically the same stuff. It's the president communicating certain information. It's just each president did it differently. All right, so that's definitely very, very big picture. So the strategy that I want on this one, even though it's an overview, I want you to understand the effect, the law or the regulation, but also the why do we have this stuff? Why are we doing the things that we're doing? How is this stuff being communicated between the federal agencies? Once you understand that, then once you get that big picture why, then it's a lot easier to start understanding this stuff. And we start picking up on these key words like, let's just generically say policies, procedures, guidelines, baselines, and standards. When you're reading your practice test questions and you pick up on those key words or the agency or the department, it'll help you distinguish that information. All right. So here's one way of looking at the way communication happens. Right, so Congress is to pass laws to support the president's agenda. So Congress, they basically do legislation and some examples. Then you have DHS, so Congress works with DHS. And then there's the executive branch, Congress works with the Office of Management or the President's Office. And then they will reach out to NIST for basically standard or guideline assistance. And then what was CNSS again? I know, this is the hard, again.
National Security Standards, I forgot.
It's the training standard.
Training.
Right. Again, the difficult part here is you just got to get it out. That's going to be the challenge of speaking that language. It's really no more difficult than holding a 5-minute conversation on any one of these subjects, but it's being able to get it out and put the words in place, and that's the mental challenge that we're going to have to work through this week.
So the C is for congressional?
Committee on National Security Systems.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Committee on National Security Systems.
Okay.
Page 9 of the text.
Right, and I have abbreviated here: Paperwork Reduction Act, PRA, Computer Security Act, CSA.
Gotcha.
Right, so that would be the standard based off of the roles and responsibilities. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is this way. All right, president's agenda. Basically, you have the executive branch pushing things over to Congress to get legislation, whether it be Paperwork Reduction Act or Homeland Security or Computer Security Act, FISMA, whatever it is. Congress will reach over to NIST for guidance and the federal agencies. Federal agencies push things over to OMB and back for basically oversight. And then you have an authority on the other side with DHS.
Well, let me get off base a little bit.
No, go ahead.
Where does DOD fit into this picture? It seems like they were the ones driving all
That's
that.
just our defense department. That's just one small piece of that
Okay.
for the purpose of national security versus CIA. What's the purpose of the CIA?
Intelligence.
Whose?
Anybody's,
No,
oh,
absolutely not.
What was the purpose of CIA?
The what?
What was the question?
What was the purpose of the CIA?
Deception.
World, international.
International intelligence. They're not allowed to do domestic intelligence for the sake of Big Brother spying and privacy and all that.
yeah,
other
in
stuff.
theory.
Yeah.
I'm just,
We'll leave it at that. But in theory, right, Central Intelligence Agency, that was all international oriented, where the Federal Bureau of Investigation was inside the United States. So in between our counterparts, we're almost having a basic government. Why is our government laid out the way that it is between the different branches and, the purpose of the president?
Okay, well, the reason I asked the question is because I have EA, I'm the manager of EA.
Okay.
But it seems like a lot of these security standards that we're adhering to are sort of we're piggybacking off of DOD.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with national security stuff. So, like, for example, anything Marine, Army, Navy, all that's going to fall under the Pentagon umbrella, like literally right across the street here. All of that's in the interest of national security. But then you have other agencies like labor, commerce, agriculture. While they're government system, they have nothing to do with national security. Agree, disagree?
Well, yeah, I agree, but it just seems like DOD is the
Or you can throw in a
out front
standard too.
standard setter.
They have their own set of rules. They really do. So in the DoD world, we want to keep things confidential. You've got Homeland Security, you got the Department of Defense. They use the Bell LaPadula model, and everything's based on clearances and classifications to keep things private. Then you want to go non-DoD. Well, they still have to keep things private, but that falls under the Computer Security Act or the Privacy Act 74. Nothing to do with clearances and classifications. Still based off of standards and guidelines, just like DoD is, different set of rules. So we literally operate on two different platforms. Now, some people like the way that happens. In other words, let's keep national defense and certain things secret for the sake of our own national security. Other people, they dislike that idea altogether. Nothing should be a secret.
Okay, well,
Go ahead.
you work for Commerce, right? Are you guys piggybacking off of a lot of the DOD standards and guidelines?
As far as this goes, no, because the DoD follows different state regulations as
Right.
far as the CNA process goes. FISMA, and while a lot of the controls are similar, there are some very distinct ones that are not. They don't go together.
Okay. And you're
I'm assuming not, because the NIST and FISMA and the terms that I've heard thrown around, as opposed to, I don't hear our
They do
NIST
NIST,
talking about
but it's
DOD
just-
this or DOD that, so I'm assuming
seems like
no.
they go to DOD when they want to see how to do it. What DOD
No.
has done.
It depends.
The DoD usually has a little bit more stringent level of controls in place because of the amount or the type of data that they're securing. And I think that the ultimate goal is to come up with one framework that can
I would
merge
agree with
into
that.
both.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's what happens now, but
Yeah, no, it does happen now. but
I would love for that to
that's the
happen,
ultimate
right?
goal.
Simplicity, right? Keep it simple, silly.
All right.
And they may feel, like I said, no offense to FISMA and NIST, I don't know enough about it, but they may feel that DOD is that notch above, so if we're going to go, we're going to go with the best, or we're going to go with
Well, hence the standard. Why do we have two separate standards for DoD and non-DoD? Why not just make it all a DoD standard? I mean, devil's advocate,
Yeah.
food for thought there. See, he works at the higher up in Department of Commerce because NIST is with the Department of Commerce, but that's its own agency under that umbrella. Just like you have Health and Human Services, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare is under Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
But so is Centers for Disease Control, that's Health and Human Services. And there's National Institute of Health. So the bigger agency versus the child agency, he works for the big agency. Whether the lady that was in my last class, she worked for actually NIST and itself, still Department of Commerce, but completely mutually exclusive.